Oh, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Tales of Agmar podcast. I'm your host, Sinjin, and creator of the Tales of Agmar universe, and I'm super excited to bring you today's story. We're going to continue talking about Aster's origin today, but first, before we get into all of that, let's just do a couple of announcements. Obviously, the two big ones are, well, three big ones technically, depending on how you break it up. I break them up as two, but the first big one is about the Discord and the Ko-fi, right? So the Discord exists. It's free. Love you guys to come in there, hang out with us, chat it up, and let me know your thoughts, feelings about things, right? Like, I really want to just communicate with you guys as a community, and it's been good. So, the second part of this one is the Ko-fi, right? It's a thing. It exists. It's just more of a tip jar, right? Just if you like what you're seeing and you want to support us right now, fantastic. And then, obviously, the big thing going on is the book. Okay, so whole entire reason why I made the podcast, why I'm doing this all, is to get ready for this book, and it is actually going along quite well. So I achieved my goal last week of basically finishing what I would call the like one storyline of the book, so to speak. Basically, it's like a character arc. All right, so I finished one character arc. That is basically 2 out of 3 character arcs done, and I just need one more, and then we'll be done with the book. And I've already got notes to add in a few things, so hopefully that will speed up the time between once this is done and when we get it out to you. And well, by we, I mostly mean me and my, well, actually my girlfriend, who's kind of doing some pre-reading, just helping me work more on that grammar and just like, right, she's mostly reading for continuity purposes right now to make sure that it all fits together as a good cohesive story. And so far the feedback from her is super good, and I really trust her feedback because she is very honest and has read tons of books. So I'm super excited. Anyways, we'll see how all that unfolds, but that's all the announcements we have for today. So let's just get into this Aster, and we're going to pick up from where we left off last time, right? So just quick recap there. Just in case it's been, like a week or so since you listened to us last. Aster's parents are trying to get her to work in the factories on Bliss, right? This is an occurrence that happens a lot. Once they hit about 8 years old, they can start working in factories, and a lot of families do. A lot of kids end up doing it, right? They're assigned pretty simple tasks, make a very simple wage, and can add to their family's living that way, right? So it works out obviously great for the Republic because parents can start doing other more professional or more technical tasks that they can be trained for, and then the kids are working too, they're occupied, right? And then the family gets money, so everyone wins in that situation. Totally, there's no downsides. That's sarcasm in case you can't tell right now. But right, so instead Aster, she's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. I actually want to be trying to move up through the citizen codex, try to get into school, improve her situation, make her life better, which kind of unusual thing. Obviously, it exists. People try it, but a lot of Class 5 citizens' kids just don't end up being able to collect the skills to then get into a school through an entrance exam and then to stay through all that. So, right, she's trying to become free through the Ellonist Republic, well, as free as she can. So, we're going to pick up after her 8th birthday. She's continued kind of studying, reading street signs, copying street signs, doing what she can to pick up reading and writing, as those are two big things that the Ellonist Republic isn't just going to teach to Class 5 citizens, but if they pick it up, that's a huge part of that entrance exam that she would have to take. Kind of similar to like an ACT or SAT, if you ever take one of those in America. Basically, it's a sort of comprehensive test that analyzes what you know. Obviously, in Aster's case, it would not be at the level of SAT or ACT tests. It's going to be geared more towards, what would she actually know? Kind of, let's see. So she's like 8, so, that's kind of like elementary school, primary school sort of vibes, right? So it would be like that. Like, right, can you read this basic level passage and tell me what happened? Can you write down something, those vibes. And then obviously simple stuff like math, arithmetic, etc., right? So hopefully you're getting that gist. That is just a comprehensive test. It's not anything super crazy. And then based on if she scores well or not, then she would get into the school at the right age level, and then be able to continue from there. And then another great thing is, right, school is completely paid for by the state in the Ellonist Republic, so her parents wouldn't have to pay for it. Like, it's not an extra cost for them, it's just if she would get inside or not. And anyways, let's start kind of running through what that looks like for her, right? So we kind of started, how she's got to go around and read stuff, and how most people that are class 5 citizens aren't really reading and writing. About pretty much what they can read is signs, obviously, right? You got to know where you're going. So a lot of people kind of pick up how to read a sign, how to get directions from a sign, how to give directions, that sort of thing. A lot of stuff in these factors is normally just taught on hand, not through like tons of PowerPoints. That's more for level, citizens like level 4 and level 3 to really worry about if they're going to make PowerPoints and stuff like that. These guys are just watching like maybe videos or something pretty easy to take in and doing a task that reflects it being very easy to take in. So, kind of like push this button or put this object here on the line. Every time, object goes from red to green slot. That kind of thing, right? So it's like pretty simple to pick up, but they just need humans doing it so that it, doesn't use up the amount of machinery or, keeps them occupied, that kind of thing. That's really what these tasks are doing. At the end, they still produce a product, but yeah. So anyways, right, science. Next, standard propaganda. Obviously, within the Ellonist Republic, these people need to be reading their propaganda so that they stay true to the human powers, right? And so people can, read from that, or they can tell from, public television screens what's going on. They're not called television screens, but public screens that they're like, oh, such and such planet has been attacked. They can read that and kind of know that stuff is happening, right? Recruitment posters, obviously another big thing. If we're recruiting for our expeditionary forces, we just need people to be very interested in, signing up for expeditionary forces, getting that prestige, and shipping them off to our training camps. And so that would be kind of advertised there. And we'd really be encouraging people how to do that, right? So there's like a very basic, I would say maybe 1st to 2nd grade reading level that gets achieved with kind of like some bigger words, right? But that's about where most class 5s finish up, right? Okay. Now, writing. Class 5 citizens aren't really writing reports that much. That's like we were talking about, that's going to be class 4 and above. They're actually going to be reading and writing. And so to get into this test, like we just discussed, Aster's got to learn how to read and write. And thankfully, she ends up getting pretty good at this. There's a local terminal store, and terminals are just what I've called basically all sort of like computer or smart devices that have a screen inside of the Tales of Agmar universe. Right? Like people will be typing at a terminal, or they'll be adjusting their wrist terminal, or they'll have like a portable terminal, and that you can probably kind of infer, but that would be like computer, smartwatch, tablet kind of thing, right? And so that's what people are running around with. Aster comes into one of these stores, right? So obviously this guy is a class 4 citizen who owns this store, and she just kind of starts messing around, and the guy just kind of lets her do it, right? She's not stealing anything. She seems pretty smart. He overhears her learning how to read and write. He's a pretty chill guy. He just kind of lets it happen, right? He's just like a chill background character, not full on like mentor type, but like a type of, oh, hey, like I'll conveniently leave this here because I know you come in around this time, so that, she can learn how to read. And so she starts progressively increasing her reading level. She runs into, figuring out how to turn the terminal on and off. Obviously, that part he does kind of show her. And then learning how to work in the terminal. And so she starts, learning how to write or type, in this case, through the terminal and kind of copying passages, right? She picks that up on her own, proving that, she's kind of a smart kid. And as this keeps going on, right, that's like a whole year passes of her doing this, of her continuously visiting the terminal store just about every day, learning to read, learning to write. So she's getting close to being 9 years old now. progressively kind of losing that window of where she could try out for the application to get into school, right? And she needs her parents' permission to get that application. So we're getting close to her birthday now. And she, is going to go on her birthday, ask her parents, hey, can we sign me up to go take this test? As she's hoping that maybe if she shows them that they will change their mind. If she shows them she's ready, they could change their mind and be like, okay, yeah, you are actually ready to take this test. You don't need to go work in the factory with us. Aster's parents aren't really concerned about that, right? They're very concerned about the here and now, and they're thinking if they can just get Aster to start working, they can get her to take that focus drug. She'll be stuck working, and they might even be able to possibly stop working if she gets paid enough or something like that, right? Like their plan is to basically get her to start doing more work so they can do less work everywhere. You're kind of like a Cinderella situation. Obviously, this is a bad situation, and hopefully, there's, if you know someone in the situation and it's a bad situation, you should help them get out. But carrying on with this story, right? Tales of Agmar is fiction; it's not a real person. But Aster goes in there, right? She's got this plan. It's a smart plan, right? Show my parents that I can read and I can write, and they will let me progress and improve myself within the Ellonist Republic. And so she does that, right? She brings a piece of paper and she's like, hey, look, I can read, I can write. Let me show you. And she writes out a whole paragraph from the Ellonist Creed, right? Her parents are like, oh, like, that's awesome, kind of, while freaking out in their heads, like, no, like, she's getting smarter. She could catch on to us. We need to apply the drug now instead of later to her so that she isn't surpassing us, right? Because now they're not just worried about getting the money. They're worried about Aster getting to a point where she is no longer able to be controlled by them. Okay? And all right, so she gets done doing this, and they're like, oh yeah, she's kind of buying into the praise, and they offer her food like they did last year. She goes to take the food and kind of doesn't want to eat it. It's got the weird taste again. She starts feeling kind of fuzzy, and her parents ask her again. They're like, hey, how about we go work at the factory? Because like they're trying to gauge how impressionable she is if she's consumed enough of the drug, right? And she goes, no, like, I don't really want to do that. I want to take the exam so I can get in, right? Her parents try to lie to her, be like, oh, like, you need money to get into the exam, so you should just start working at the factory. Trying to get her to, like, when she goes there, she'll be working long shifts. She won't be able to really improve her learning. And, right, then she'll be stunted. She'll get so used to working. That's kind of their thought process and their goals for her at this time. Aster obviously doesn't like this. She runs away to her room, as most kids do, right? At least, well, yeah. And she jumps in there, closes the door, locks it. Thankfully, she has a lock. She's hiding there. Her parents are like, hey, they're starting to bang on the door, like, we gotta get you signed up so you can work at the factory. And they progressively just get more and more aggressive, very violent, lots of banging. Aster, as a kid, freaks out, finds a way to escape. That way is also through a very convenient window. Breaks open the window, jumps through it, probably kind of gets beat up by the window. These are all just notes that I have for a future, like, Aster Origins book or novella, so it's very crude, but I feel like it's turning out quite well. But anyway, sorry. Getting myself back on track, I get way too distracted sometimes explaining things. She bolts. Right, she bolts it. She's trying to make it to the terminal store. She knows the guy there is at least kind of friendly to her, right? Her pastime, what she's used to doing is learning. Learning kind of becomes comforting to her, which is interesting. That's not always something that people think would be, comforting to a child, but it's just that idea of, like, her being able to do something that doesn't involve her parents becomes very comforting for Aster, which is why she's enjoyed learning, because she could do it without anyone really bugging her, right? So anyways, She runs off. She's about to turn the corner, and she sees that the guy's shop is swarmed by planetary defense troopers. All right, and so these guys, just in case for anyone that's stepping in with us midbound or may not have listened to a bunch of sci-fi stuff before, planetary defense troopers are basically like a planet-wide police force slash first line of defense in places and on planets that don't have large military presence, right? They're sort of like a National Guard, sort of not. Often they're deployed in more defensive maneuvers, that kind of thing, right? Kind of similar to like a city guard. If you're very used to fantasy, they're sort of the city guard equivalent for a basic explanation. So, anyways, right, he's getting now carried away by that swarm of PDF troopers, obviously for something he did, right? She doesn't know. She's just a kid trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out computers. Well, conveniently, she has been, at his place learning. She isn't able to slip in and grab a terminal, but she has been learning coding this whole time, right? So that's an additional skill she has, is that ability to code, because this guy kind of taught her loosely one day by leaving a book. Well, not like a book, but their version of a book, which would just be a tablet or a portable terminal that was opened to a coding book. So anyways, she ends up kind of going away for a couple days, comes back later, breaks in, grabs this portable terminal that the guy had let her use before, and continues to read. She finds out there's other books on there, figures out kind of how to manipulate, just like how a kid figures out how to move like an iPad or navigate between apps on an iPad, open, close it, that sort of thing. All right, so she starts becoming pretty proficient on it, gets it doing different things, learns more about coding because that's very fascinating for her, which then leads her more into who Aster becomes later in her role inside the Aces group of the Ellonist Republic. But anyways, it's been a couple days. She's just been on the streets, scavenging for food, not a lot of food. She gets kind of hungry. She's hoping, okay, well, maybe my parents have cooled down now, right? She's hoping maybe they're stuck on a bit of focus still, and she can come home, maybe scavenge for supplies, maybe convince her parents to just go sign her up, because she kind of knows what this focus drug is after being on the streets for a couple days and realized that that was what her parents were trying to feed her. Well, when she comes into her childhood home, she finds out that both of her parents have been stabbed, and they're just kind of slumped up in the corner of their version of like a living room or a sitting room, and they're gone, right? So they're not going to have to bug her anymore, but she is out of parents, which could prove a problem moving forward. She tries to stick around for a few days, eats what food she can, and eventually, after I think about like 3 to 4 days, it starts getting really, really stinky, right? There's dead bodies in there. They've been in there for a while, and she's got to leave because of the smell. And right, she's gonna take a bag full of some stuff, leave out the same window she left out before, and she doesn't really want to see what they look like again. And then she's out in the streets again, a little bit more prepared maybe this time, but she's only 11. She's a kid. Kids staying on the streets can stick out sometimes, and she does in this case. The authorities, the PDF of Bliss, end up finding her, and she gets, they get her to lead them back to her house. They find out that she's, orphaned now, and she goes into a state-run orphanage, which conveniently puts her through a sort of prepper, or I forget exactly what it's called, but right, like a school that's just going to pick her up to speed. So lucky her, she was just really one of the lucky ones. That doesn't always happen. Some older kids get pressed into being a Marine or even a expeditionary pretty quick, but they bring her to the orphanage, kind of run like a smaller comprehensive test. They did find her with a terminal, obviously, and so there is that assumption that, okay, maybe she does know stuff, as she has done things on the terminal. She's not given the terminal back, as that is stolen property in a pending investigation, but they do give her sort of a restart, right? So sometimes the Ellonist Republic can be kind of beneficial to grow up in as a human, Sometimes not. Depends who you run into in that big, beautiful bureaucracy of theirs. But that's where she's at, right? So she's now on this path of going through school. And we're going to kind of speed through this part a little bit so we can get onto the rest of her story next time. But, right, Aster finally makes it to school. She's achieved her dream of school, but because she learned how she was, because she was learning how she was learning, right? Excuse me for that. She keeps going, keeps plowing through. She actually ends up learning a whole lot in not a lot of time. Right? Very exciting for teachers, kind of similar to Gander, except Gander just is really good at memorizing like facts of things and putting that out and just retaining information that way. She becomes very good at, coding and problem solving. And so as she gets into more of those classes, because that's the track that she chooses, right? If you remember from Gander's course, he chose the soldier career kind of track, right? Where he could then get onto the ace track so that he could possibly become special forces. She goes in a very different way, trying to get on to becoming a software engineer, basically. And will like their equivalent of it be different than ours because it is sci-fi. But that's where she's running. She's feeling kind of good. She's 11 now, right? So it's been 2 years. Feeling pretty good about herself. But school's kind of cool start. School, excuse me for all that, starts to become very monotonous for her. Right? Super boring. If you've met any smart people in your life, sometimes they'll just look bored out of their minds and you'll be like really confused why they're bored because they're like, oh, you're super smart. They're just like, well, I spent like a really boring, whatever, meeting, class, lecture, etc. So she's running into this situation. And instead of sitting and sticking through it like Gander just did, right? Because Gander had a father that encouraged him to just sit and stick through it. Aster doesn't really have anyone like that. So she starts finding out her own way to do things, right? Her own way to release. And that's like, she just starts kind of going out, right? She starts kind of becoming more social, figures out that is a thing she likes doing. So she goes through a year about kind of like, leaving school, not even showing up for school, right? She's still passing school and just claims to be sick all the time. Right, like a system can only buy that for so long before you really think something's wrong with the person. But she starts hanging out with a group of kids that, by her 12th birthday, they become pretty close knit. And she finds out that this group of like kids isn't just a group of kids. It's just a lot of local people, just local residents of Bliss that grew up on Bliss. Their parents died on Bliss, kind of similar to her. They feel like her people. And she feels pretty good with the group, right? And that's where we're going to end, right? So this next week we'll pick up on Aster with, her running into this group on Bliss, and we'll explore more of what turns her into the person that she has to become, to where she does end up going to Ragash and meeting Gander, etc., right? But anyways, thanks so much for sticking around to the end, guys. Please let me know your thoughts and possible excitements for Tales of Agmar and Aster as a character. I really enjoyed today's episode. Reading and recording. I know I always say that, but I really am just enjoying doing this for you guys. And I hope you'll continue to stick around and check it out when the book goes live in what will hopefully be a few short weeks. But again, I'll try to keep you guys updated as best I can as I record things ahead of time to prep for my life kind of becoming a little hectic again. But yeah, anyways, excuse me. Next week, Monday, 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, we will be back here with another Aster origin story. So yeah, please like and subscribe if you haven't yet, or follow whatever is on the platform that you're listening to us on. And don't forget to turn on notifications so that you can get notified as soon as the next episode of Tales of Agmar drops. Anyways, I personally hope, though, that you guys all have a great week and that you don't forget to be the best you can be. And I'll see y'all when I see ya.